What is going on, everybody? New York Sports Up here, back at it with another MLB video. This video is going to be a MLB Power Rankings going in for the 2020 season. This is a video I've been looking forward to doing for a very, very long time. I'm so happy baseball's back and I get to do Power Rankings. Now, the Power Rankings isn't really going to be judged on how good I think the team will do. It's just how I think how good, their future is and how good their roster is. That's how it's going to be judged. So, I'm going to go from start off with the worst team and then go on to the best team. So, coming in at number 30, the team I think is the worst team, or the worst roster, is going to be the Baltimore Orioles. I'm not a big fan of the Orioles. We absolutely owned the Orioles last year. The Orioles, once again, they lost Trey Mancini. Trey Mancini was their star player last year. He's pretty much the only bright spot on that team, and Trey Mancini is gone for the entire season. The Orioles have atrocious pitching. They have no bullpen. The Orioles are by far, in my opinion, the worst team in Major League Baseball, and they finished in, once again, second place, the second worst team. They were last year, I'm pretty sure, and they were the worst team back in 2018. Without Trey Mancini, that Orioles team is absolutely atrocious. I have them coming in at number 30. Coming in at number 29, I have the team that was the worst team last year, and that is the Detroit Tigers. The only reason why I'm not putting them at 30 is because they made two nice signings in the offseason. They brought in Jonathan Scope and C.J. Cron, the two former Twins. Those could be a nice, veteran power bats to that lineup, but besides that, the Tigers still have probably still the worst offense in baseball. They scored no runs last year. They are by far the worst offense in the league. They don't have good pitching either. Besides Matthew Boyd, who I do think is overrated, the Tigers do not have any good pitchers at all, although they do have Casey Mize in the farm system. Besides that, the Tigers have pretty much no pitchers. Their bullpen's awful. Their bullpen's awful. They really don't have a good lineup besides Jonathan Scope and Cron. Miguel Cabrera is not the same player he used to be. The Tigers are a team that's in the rebuild phase. They're definitely one of the worst teams in baseball. I have them finishing at 29. Coming in at 28, I have the Seattle Mariners, and the Mariners are a team that has a lot of nice young players. Guys like Justice Sheffield, guys like Jared Kelenic, guys like Kyle Lewis, that could turn out to be good players. But once again, we don't know how many how many games they'll play this year. They also have Evan White. The Mariners have a lot of good young prospects that they got, in the Robinson Cano, Edwin Diaz deal that they got in a lot of other deals. The Mariners have a lot of nice young kids. I do think the Mariners have a bright future, but for this year, I don't think they're very good. The Mariners' best pitcher is Marco Gonzalez. Marco Gonzalez is a number 3 pitcher at best. Yusei Kikuchi had an awful year last year. The Mariners really do not have any pitchers, although they do have Justice Sheffield, who I think is really good, but we don't know how he's pitched in the major leagues yet. He's barely even pitched in the major leagues at all. They also have Justin Dunn, the former Mets prospect, and the Mariners do have some nice hitters. They have Mitch Haniger, but he's also coming off a big injury. We don't know how Mitch Haniger will play this year. Dan Vogelbach is a beast. That dude's like a miniature Babe Ruth. He's a beast. But besides that, the Mariners kind of have a dry lineup as well. I don't think Seattle's a very good team. I have them finishing at 28. At number 27, the Kansas City Royals. And the Royals are a team that has a lot of bright spots in that team, in my opinion. I do think the Royals have a bright future, but for this year, I still don't think they're very good. They're still rebuilding. The Royals have a lot of nice young hitters in that lineup. They got Whit Merrifield, who's a machine for getting on base. They got Alberto Mondesi, Jorge Soler, who launched balls last year. He was a beast last year. Hunter Dozier, who's a nice young player. They have Alex Gordon, nice veteran guy. And they also have Salvador Perez, one of the best catchers in baseball, but he's coming off a big injury, so we don't know how he'll play this year. The Royals have a pretty decent lineup, but their pitching's still not very good. They don't really have an ace on that team. Their farm system's not very good, so I don't think the Royals have a good season this year. They did bring in a new head coach with Mike Matheny, the former Cardinals manager, but I still don't think Kansas City is very good. I think they're one of the worst teams in baseball. I have them finishing at number 27. I do think they have a bright future, though. At number 26, I have the first National League team. I have the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Giants were a team that had a lot better record than I thought they did last year, but the Giants got a lot worse this offseason. They got rid of their best pitcher in Madison Bumgarner. He went to a division rival to the Diamondbacks. The Giants pitching now is still not very good. They have Johnny Cueto coming off a big injury. They don't know how good Johnny Cueto will be. Also, he's getting up there in age. Jeff Samardzija is a pretty solid pitcher, but he's also very, very old. The Giants are just a very old team. The Giants have to start rebuilding this year. They got to get rid of Buster Posey, get rid of Evan Longoria, get rid of Brandon Crawford, get rid of Brandon Belt, clean house, get a nice young roster, work off the young guys like Mauricio Dubon and Mike Yastrzemski, who had a really good season last year. The Giants do have some decent young players, but I just think they got to play them more. They got to get rid of their old players. They're not the same World Series team like they were back in the mid-2010s where they won the World Series. They're not the same team they used to be. The Giants have got to start rebuilding, which I think they will after this year. So I think they're the worst team in the National League, in my opinion. I have them finishing at number 26. And they also hired side note, they also hired Gabe Kapler. What a horrible hire. Gabe Kapler is a bad manager. Why would they hire him? I don't know why, but yeah, the Giants aren't going to be very good next year, I don't think. So I have them at 26. At number 25, the Miami Marlins. Now, the Marlins are a team I think has a very, very bright future. I like their young core of pitchers. I like Sandy Alcantara. He made the All-Star team last year. I think he's a really good young pitcher. They got Caleb Smith. They got Jordan Yamamoto. The Marlins have a nice young, starting rotation. They also have a decent bullpen. They have, they have some good guys down there in the bullpen. They have Drew Steckenrider, who had a good season last year. They brought in some good guys to hit. They still have a very young lineup, and I don't think the Marlins will be a very good team. This year, the Marlins play in the toughest division in the league with the National League East. So, they have a lot of good teams in that division. The Phillies, Mets, Nationals, and Phillies and Braves, I think, are four playoff teams, four possible playoff teams for the year. And I don't think the Marlins will be able to compete with those teams. But the Marlins, I do think, have a very, very bright future. I think Derek Jeter's done a pretty good job with the Marlins of bringing in young prospects for the Marlins. They have they signed Corey Dickerson, they signed Jesus Aguilar, they also signed Jonathan Villar, one of the most underrated second basemen in baseball. I think the Marlins have a very bright future, and maybe they're a secret playoff team. Maybe in a couple years from now, they can be a playoff team. I have them at 25 though. At number 24, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Pirates were a team that was kind of like we're close to being in a playoff team, after the first half. But after the second half, they really started to fall off. Josh Bell had a fantastic first half of the season, then he really fell off after the All-Star break, as a lot of other hitters did in Major League Baseball. The Pirates do have a lot of nice young hitters. They got Kevin Newman, they got Brian Reynolds, they got Adam Frazier, they got a lot of nice young hitters on that lineup, but their pitching is still not very good. Jamison Tyone is not very healthy. Chris Archer, they lost him for the entire season. Their pitching is not very good. Trevor Williams is okay, but besides that, they really don't have any good pitching pieces. They lost their best reliever in Felipe Vasquez. The Pirates don't really have any good pitching. They have a decent lineup, but they don't really have the pitching to compete this year, in my opinion. And also, they play in a kind of a tough division as well. So I have them finishing at number 24. At number 23, this is one of the teams I think has the brightest future in Major League Baseball. But for this year, I still don't think they're a very good team. I have at 23, I have the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays are a team that has a lot of nice young players. They have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they have Kevin Biggio, they have Bo Bichette. They're going to be superstars in the major leagues. I'm counting on that. Kevin Biggio's dad was a really good Houston Astro. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s dad, we all know who he was. Vlad was a beast. They also, Bo Bichette, Bo Bichette's dad, Dante Bichette, was a pretty good player. The Blue Jays had a lot of nice young players on that roster. They also have Randall Grichuk, who's a decent outfielder. They also have Danny Jansen, who didn't really play well last year, but I think he's a decent catcher. They got a lot of nice young players on that Blue Jays team. They also have Nate Pearson in the minor leagues, who I think should pitch this year. Nate Pearson is a great pitcher. He should definitely pitch for them this year. But the Blue Jays still lack, in my opinion, on the starting pitching. They brought in Hyun-Jin Ryu, which I thought was a nice signing, but I don't know how Hyun-Jin Ryu will stay healthy. Hyun-Jin Ryu's always struggled with injuries, and Matt Shoemaker, they signed him last year. Matt Shoemaker's a pretty solid pitcher, but once again, he didn't pitch that much this year. They don't have Marcus Stroman anymore. The Blue Jays kind of lack on the pitching side of the baseball. So I think the Blue Jays come in at, I have the Blue Jays at 23. I think they're a pretty solid team. They have a nice young roster, but I still think they're a couple years away from a playoffs. So I have them at 23. At number 22, the Colorado Rockies. And the Rockies are a very, very tough team to rank because they have one of the best lineups in baseball. They have Nolan Arenado, they have Charlie Blackmon, they have Trevor Story, they have Daniel Murphy. They have such good hitters in that lineup, but their pitching is absolutely atrocious. They probably have the worst pitching staff in baseball. John Gray is the only solid pitcher on that team. German Marquez had a good season back in 2018, but he was bad in 2019. Whatever happened to Kyle Freeland? He had Kyle Freeland had a very, very good year in 2018, came back in 2019. It was atrocious. The Rockies do not have good pitching at all. And that's why I have the Rockies finishing at 22. They have such good offense, but they just have awful pitching. And pitching wins games, and the Rockies just don't have pitching. So I have them finishing at 22. Coming in at number 21, another team with a very, very bright future, and that is the San Diego Padres. They've got Fernando Tatis Jr. on that team. What a rookie season Fernando Tatis Jr. had. I think he probably could have won Rookie of the Year if he never got injured. Fernando Tatis Jr. is a fantastic player. They got Manny Machado. They have Will Myers. They have some decent hitters in that lineup. But once again, they're still pretty young. They got Ty France, who could develop into a good player. Their pitching staff, the pitching staff not too bad. They signed Zach Davies. They have Chris Paddock, who had a really, really good season. They have Joey Lucchesi, who's a pretty good young pitcher. But the Padres are still a very young team. Their division, once again, their division isn't too tough, but I still think the Padres are maybe a year away from the playoffs. So I have them finishing at 21 this year. So I still think they're a year away from the playoffs because they're still a very young team. At number 20, a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this. the Boston Red Sox. What a bad offseason the Red Sox had. The Red Sox were involved in a cheating scandal. They fired their manager in Alex Cora, and the Red Sox lost Chris Sale for the entire season. Chris Sale's their ace pitcher. Chris Sale's one of the nastiest pitchers in baseball, and they lost him for the entire season, and maybe a little bit of 2021 due to Tommy John surgery. They won't have Chris Sale through the entire season. They lost. They traded away their best player, Mookie Betts. This Red Sox team is not good. They have awful pitching. And there's going to be a lot of Red Sox fans in the comments section, I can just tell, that are going to say their team's a lot better. This Red Sox team is not very good. They still have a very decent lineup. They have J.D. Martinez, they have Xander Bogaerts, they have Christian Vasquez, but they have absolutely no pitching, and pitching wins games. The Red Sox had a very disappointing season last year. The Red Sox won 108 games just 2 years ago, and they came back last year and won 84. The Yankees owned the Red Sox last year. They did not play well against over 500 teams. I have the Red Sox finishing at number 20. I don't think they're going to be good next year. At number 19, kind of an underrated team in my opinion, that is the Texas Rangers. But the Rangers have kind of been disappointing the past 3 years. I always thought the Rangers could be a possible playoff team. The past 3 seasons, they've never really shown me that they can. But the Rangers, I thought, had a pretty nice offseason. They brought in Corey Kluber for absolutely nothing. They got an absolute steal in Corey Kluber. They traded away Corey Kluber, or they signed Corey Kluber. What they gave to Cleveland, they gave nothing to Cleveland. They gave Delino DeShields to the Indians. Delino DeShields has not been a good player. He's been a bust. And they also gave away Emmanuel Clase, who's a reliever that's probably not even going to pitch this year because he got suspended for PED use. So the Indians pretty much traded away an all-star pitcher for absolutely nothing, for pretty much a mediocre outfielder. Well, I mean, what a trade by the Texas Rangers. They got an absolute steal in Corey Kluber. And I thought the Rangers had a pretty decent offseason. They have a very decent rotation. They also have Mike Minor. They have Lance Lynn. I think the Rangers maybe could be a possible playoff team. I don't really see it, but maybe I think they maybe could be a sleeper team in 2020 because I thought they had a pretty nice offseason in my opinion, but their lineup's kind of mediocre, but they did have a very nice offseason. So I can put the Rangers, I'm going to have the Rangers at 19. At number 18, a team that did not really have a good offseason, the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers did not have a very good offseason, They still have Christian Yelich, they still have Keston Hiura, but, they gave away a lot of their good players. They gave away Mike Moustakas, they traded him away to the Reds. Yasmani Grandal went to the White Sox, well, they were free agents, but they did not re-sign either of those two. The Brewers are not the same team they were last year. I don't think they're a playoff team this year. Their pitching isn't very good. They got rid of Zach Davies, who was one of their best pitchers last year. Brandon Woodruff is still a nice young pitcher, but it's a question if he can stay healthy or not. The Brewers, in my opinion, not a really good team going into next season. I have them at 18. At number 17, another team that's very, very tough to rank. I could have put them a little lower, but I think I also could have put them a little bit higher. The LA Angels. The Angels have a very, very high expectations this year. The Angels brought in Anthony Rendon, who's one of the best third basemen in baseball. They have him to team up with Mike Trout. That Angels offense is really, really good, but their pitching is not good. I didn't think they improved their pitching enough. They signed Julio Teheran. They signed Dylan Bundy, who are two kind of solid pitchers, but the pitching staff is still not very good. The Angels had probably had the worst pitching in baseball last year. Now they probably still have the second worst behind the Rockies. The Angels, I feel like, did not improve their pitching enough, although Shohei Ohtani is returning. He is going to pitch. He is going to pitch again this year. The Angels have a very, very good lineup, but they still don't have pitching, and I don't think the Angels will make the playoffs this year, so I have them down at 17. At number 16, I have the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies arguably were the most disappointing team. I think they were the most disappointing team in baseball. I thought the Phillies were definitely going to be a playoff team. Maybe they could even win that division last year. They finished in 4th place. Boy, what a disappointing season the Phillies had. They have a very, very good lineup. They have Bryce Harper. They have GT Realmuto. They have Andrew McCutchen coming off a big injury. They have, Scott Kingery. They signed Didi Gregorius. I thought the Phillies had a very, very good offseason. They brought in Joe Girardi, which is a very, very good hire. And I think Joe Girardi is a really good manager. I don't know why the Yankees fired him, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But the Phillies had a very, very good offseason. I thought they signed Zach Wheeler, much needed move. But the Phillies' bottom of the rotation is still very, very weak. They don't really have a good bullpen either. Nick Pavetta's never really proved anything to be a good pitcher. Neither has Vince Velasquez. Jake Arrieta, in my opinion, is a pitcher who used to be a Cy Young pitcher. Jake Arrieta is not the same pitcher he used to be. Even though they did sign Zach Wheeler, which I thought was a nice move, I still don't think the Phillies' rotation is good enough, to make the playoffs this year. I think they'll just fall short. Although I do think they had a good offseason. I still think they're kind of a mediocre team next season. So I have them at 16. At number 15, this team is just, I don't really know what to say about them. The Chicago Cubs. The Cubs didn't really make any changes. They're kind of still the same team that They've kind of been the same team for the past couple years. I think the Cubs will probably end up trading Chris Bryant maybe next season because I just don't think Chris Bryant really wants to be in Chicago anymore. They still have a very, very solid lineup. They still have Javi Baez. They still have Anthony Rizzo. They still have Wilson Contreras. But this Cubs team is just very, very boring. They've kind of been the same team, ever since they won the World Series. I don't think the Cubs are really a World Series contender. But once again, I don't think they're very bad. I think they're a pretty solid. I think they're a pretty solid team. Their pitching staff is kind of old. Kyle Hendricks is a pretty solid pitcher, but I don't think Kyle Hendricks is an ace. Kyle Hendricks doesn't really throw hard. He kind of just throws like 85 miles per hour fastballs. He's more of a ground ball pitcher. John Lester is very old. Jose Quintana's he's okay. Their pitching's very old. They brought in they don't have Cole Hamels anymore. The Cubs pitching is just they're kind of a boring team. There's not really much to say about the Cubs. I don't think they're a playoff team, but once again, I don't think they're going to be a bad team this year. So I have them finishing at 15. At number 14, this team might have had the best offseason in baseball, and that is the Chicago White Sox. What an offseason they had. They have an amazing lineup. They have Yohan Moncada, who's an absolute beast. I love Yohan Moncada. They have Tim Anderson. They have Jose Abreu. They signed Yasmani Grandal. They signed Edwin Encarnacion. They signed Nomar Mazara. They have Luis Robert coming up. They have Eloy Jimenez. They have James McCann. Their lineup is absolutely stacked, but their pitching is still not there. I still don't trust Lucas Giolito to be the same pitcher he was last year before Lucas Giolito had the All-Star season he had this year. He had an ERA over 6. I think he had the worst ERA in baseball. So I can't really trust Lucas Giolito to be the same pitcher he was last year. They did sign Dallas Keuchel, which is a nice signing, but their bottom of the rotation is still not very good. And a lot of people think do think that this spot is too low. I still don't think the White Sox have good enough pitching to be a playoff team this year, but next year, if they do end up bringing pitching, if they signed another pitcher, I think the White Sox can be a playoff team next year, but as of this year, I don't think they're a playoff team just yet because they don't really have the pitching. So I have them White Sox finishing at number 14. At number 13, this team, in my opinion, is the most underrated team in Major League Baseball, and that is the Arizona D-backs. They are so underrated. I love the Arizona Diamondbacks. They have a very, very nice young pitching staff. They brought in Madison Bumgarner. If the Diamondbacks ever making the wild card, maybe they can, upset some teams. Because I think the Diamondbacks are a very, very solid baseball team. They signed Madison Bumgarner. They already have Zach Gallen, who's a very, very nice young pitcher. They have Luke Weaver. They have Mike Leake. They have Robbie Ray. They have a very, very good starting rotation. They also have a very solid lineup. They have Ketel Marte, who had an amazing year last year. They have Eduardo Escobar. They have David Peralta. They have a very, very good lineup. This Diamondbacks team, they don't really have a lot of holes. I love this Diamondbacks team. I think they definitely could be a playoff team next season. They're such a sleeper team. I love this team. I have them finishing at 13, and I could have put it even higher. I love this team. At number 12, this team I'm not huge of a fan of, the Cleveland Indians. What a terrible trade by the Cleveland Indians. The Cleveland Indians have a terrible front office. Like, what are they doing? Why would they trade Corey Kluber for Delino DeShields and Emmanuel Clase? That's just a horrible deal by the Cleveland Indians general manager. And the Indians did not address their outfield. I thought the Indians could have gone out and signed Corey Dickerson or maybe re-signed Yasiel Puig. They didn't do either of those. The Indians had a bad offseason. Their lineup is still pretty good. They still have Francisco Lindor. They still have Jose Ramirez. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they trade Lindor after this year. Their pitching is still very good. They have a fantastic pitching staff. They have Mike Clevenger. They have Shane Bieber. They have Carlos Carrasco, but he is coming off cancer, so that might affect his season a little bit. I do think the Indians are a pretty solid team. Remember, they still won 93 games last year. They would have been a playoff team if it wasn't for Oakland when making the playoffs over them. The Indians still won 93 games, but I don't think the Indians make the playoffs this year. I think they downgrade. I did not like what the Indians did in the offseason, and I think they're once again, kind of a boring team. I have them finishing at number 12. At number 11, the New York Mets. The Mets are such a tough team to rank, because I thought the Mets were a playoff team last year. They didn't make the playoffs. They had an incredibly disappointing season. Well, they got hot at the end, but the start of the year, the Mets were absolutely atrocious, and they were like 10 games under 500 at a point. The Mets had a very, very disappointing season, I thought. But I like Brodie Van Wagenen. I still think he's a very, very good general manager. I like the signings he made. They brought in Dylan Betances. If he can stay healthy, Dylan Betances is a very, very good reliever. I really like their lineup. They have Pete Alonso, they have Michael Conforto, they have J.D. Davis, Jeff McNeil, that guy's just a machine for getting on base. They have a lot of good hitters in that lineup. They have Robinson Cano, Wilson Ramos. They have a very, very good lineup, and their pitching is absolutely fantastic. They have Marcus Stroman, they have Jacob deGrom. They did lose Noah Syndergaard for the season, which is a big blow to that rotation, but I still think their rotation is still very, very good. I still think the Mets can be a playoff team in 2020. I just think the Mets need to start off better. I think the Mets can definitely be a playoff team in 2020, but they do play in a very tough division, so, we'll see who makes that playoff. The National League wild card is going to be very interesting because there's a lot of teams who could definitely make it. I have them at number 11. At number 10, this team I think will take a huge drop off, and that is the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals won the division, Last season, I don't think they went this year. The Cardinals had a very, very disappointing offseason. They have a very, very lackluster pitching staff. They have Jack Flaherty, who's my pick to win the National League Cy Young this year. They have Miles Mikolas, who had a very good 2018. We'll see how he does in 2019. Their bullpen, it's okay. They have Andrew Miller, who's not the same reliever he used to be. They have John Gant. They have the former Yankee Giovanni Gallegos, who had a good season last year. They have they have pretty solid pitching, but their offense is kind of lackluster. They didn't really have a good offense last year. Paul Goldschmidt had a good season. But once again, not as good as he usually plays. Paul Goldschmidt's a really good player, but he wasn't really as good as he usually is. Paul DeYoung is a really, really good young player, but once again, he kind of had a big slump in the middle of the season. That kind of made his numbers not look very good. Colton Wong is a very, very good defensive player, but on the offensive side of the ball, he's not very good. Yadier Molina is aging, so the Cardinals, in my opinion, are kind of a boring team. They don't really have a good lineup. Their their offense is kind of lackluster. So I have the Cardinals finishing at 10. I don't think they'll win the division next season. They maybe even miss out in the playoffs. I'm not big on the Cardinals this season. But I still got to put them in the top 10 because they still did win the division last year, and they still have, Paul Goldschmidt and Paul DeYoung on the team. So I have them at number 10. At number 9, the defending World Series champions, the Washington Nationals. This Nationals team, even though they did lose Anthony Rendon, they are still a fantastic team. The Nationals re-signed Steven Strasburg. They got a big contract for Steven Strasburg. They still have Patrick Corbin. They still have Max Scherzer. The Nationals probably have the best pitching staff in baseball, and pitching wins ball games. And that's why I think the Nationals are a top 10 team. I could have put the Nationals even higher because they are the World Series champions, but their offense has gotten a little bit worse. They did lose Anthony Rendon, which is a big blow, but they signed Eric Thames, who's a really, really good first baseman. They still have Trey Turner, who's a really good shortstop. They still have Juan Soto, and I could talk for days on how good Juan Soto is. I love this Nationals team. They have great pitching, and pitching wins ball games, so I think the Nationals are a playoff team this year. I have them coming in at number 9. At number 8, this team had also a fantastic offseason, the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds had a great offseason. I liked their lineup beforehand. I like the Reds lineup a lot more. They signed Mike Moustakas. They signed Nicholas Castellanos, who's going to be a beast in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a hitter's ballpark. Castellanos needs, Castellanos, when he was with Detroit, was always a really good hitter, but Detroit's not really a hitter's ballpark. When he goes to Cincinnati, that place is a bandbox. Nicholas Castellanos is going to go off this season. Aristides Aquino he came out of nowhere and had a fantastic season. They got Nick Senzel, who's a nice young player. They still have Eugenio Suarez with 49 home runs last year. I love the Cincinnati Reds team. They also have fantastic pitching. This Reds team does not have any holes. They also have a pretty solid bullpen as well. The Reds have, Luis Castillo, who's a really, really good player, a really, really good pitcher. They have Sonny Gray. Who knows that Sonny Gray would be that good? They have Trevor Bauer, who, Trevor Bauer's, kind of a polarizing guy. A lot of people don't really like him, but I think Trevor Bauer's a pretty good pitcher. They have Anthony DeSclafani for some pitching depth. I think the Cincinnati Reds are a fantastic team. I think they win that division this year, and I think the Reds could be a sleeper team in the playoffs. I think this Reds team is really, really good, and I loved what they did in the offseason. At number 7, the Oakland A's, the swinging A's. The Oakland A's are always underrated. I think they're 7. I could have put the A's a little lower. I still think their pitching's not that great. They have Frankie Montas, who got suspended for PEDs. Frankie Montas had a really, really good season until he got suspended. It's a shame that he got suspended, because Frankie Montas is a really nice young pitcher. They did lose Blake Trinan, who, once again, had an amazing 2018 season. In 2019, he fell off. They still have a pretty good bullpen, though, and they have Liam Hendricks. Liam Hendricks was one of the best relievers in baseball last year. They still have a very, very good lineup with Marcus Semien, Matt Chapman, Matt Olson. They have Ramon Laureano. They have Mark Canha. The Oakland A's are still a very, very good team. They didn't really get too much worse in the offseason, I thought. Jesus Luzardo is a really, really good young pitcher. I think Jesus Luzardo is maybe a sneaky pick for, Cy Young. I love Jesus Luzardo. I think he's a really, really good pitcher. I think the Oakland A's are going to do the same thing they did last year, probably a wild card team. I really like the Oakland A's. I have them finishing at number 7. At number 6, the Tampa Bay Rays. And what the Rays do best is pitch. And I love teams that pitch really well. And that's what the Rays do. They have fantastic pitching. They've got Blake Snell, Charlie Morton. Well, although Blake Snell had a bad season last year, but he's coming off a big injury. Blake Snell, they have Charlie Morton, they have Tyler Glasnow, Ryan Yarbrough, Yanni Chirinos, Oliver Drake, Jose Alvarado, Diego Castillo. They pitch so well. They have one of the best managers in baseball with Kevin Cash. I think Kevin Cash is one of the best managers in baseball. I love this Tampa Bay Rays team, although I don't think they'll compete with my Yankees this year, because I don't think the Rays are never really good against the Yankees. I think the Rays are one of the most underrated teams in baseball, although I did not like the trade they did. I didn't like how they got rid of Tommy Pham. I thought Tommy Pham was their best hitter, and it's kind of a shame that they got rid of him, because I was always a big fan of Tommy Pham. I love that guy. I think he's a really, really good hitter. I forgot to mention that the Padres did sign Tommy Pham. But Their offense is still pretty solid, although they do kind of lack some offensive depth. They don't really have a star player. Well, I think Brandon Lau can have a good season. They also have Austin Meadows, who's a good player. They have Hunter Renfroe, who they signed for Tommy Pham. They traded for him. I do think Hunter Renfroe can be a good player if he could stay healthy. They also signed Yoshi Tsutsuga, who could be a beast. I mean, that dude was amazing when he was down in Japan or Korea or wherever he played. The Rays have a pretty good young lineup. They have really, really good pitching, and pitching wins ball games, and that's why I have the Rays at number 6. I think they're a really good team. At number 5, the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves are probably my favorite National League team. I love the Atlanta Braves. I think they have an amazing lineup with Ronald Acuna Jr., who's my pick to win the MVP this season. They have Freddie Freeman. They signed Marcell Ozuna, although they did lose Donaldson, which was a big blow, but they still brought in Ozuna, who's a good player. They have Austin Riley. They have Ender Inciarte coming back. They have Nick Markakis, who's a nice young player. Or not, he's not young, but Nick Markakis is a nice player. He's got a lot of contact. He gets hits a lot. He could get 3,000 hits this year. The Braves have a very, very good lineup. Their pitching is a little bit, it's okay. It's not terrible, though. It still gets the job done. Mike Soroka had a good rookie season last year. They did lose Julio Teheran, who was probably their second best pitcher, and that's kind of a big blow to that rotation, but they still have Mike Foltynewicz. I think will bounce back. Foltynewicz had a really good 2018. He kind of disappointed in 2019. They still have a pretty decent pitching staff. They have Max Fried as well. Although the Braves have one of the best lineups in baseball, I think if maybe they get a pitching, maybe like a pitcher at the deadline, I think the Braves could be even better. I think the Braves are I think they're a top 5 team in 2020. I think they're the second best team in the National League. Coming in at number 4, the Minnesota Twins. This team is going to rake the baseball this year. The Twins play in the weakest division in the league with the AL Central. The Twins signed Josh Donaldson to make their offense even better. The Twins scored the most runs in baseball last season. I'm pretty sure they did. They hit a ton of home runs. This team absolutely slugs. They have Nelson Cruz, who doesn't get any older. I mean, that dude's unbelievable. He's like 39 years old. He hit over 300 last year. They have Miguel Sano. They have Jorge Polanco, Eddie Rosario. This Twins team is absolutely stacked on the offensive side of the baseball. But I was very, very disappointed on how they did with the pitching. The Twins signed Homer Bailey and Rich Hill, which are decent veteran arms, but I didn't think they did enough to improve the pitching. So I have the Twins at number 4. I do think the Twins could be a lot higher, but they didn't really improve their pitching enough for me to put them a little bit higher. So I have the Twins at 4. The Twins, in my opinion, are the best offensive team in baseball. If the Twins can improve their pitching, I thought they were going to sign Madison Bumgarner. I think the Twins could be even better. So I have them at 4. At number 3, the Houston Astros. I hate to put them at 3 because they're cheaters, and they don't deserve to win that World Series back in 2017. They still won 107 games last year. The Astros might not have cheated last year. The Astros could have only cheated in 2017. The Astros are still a really, really good baseball team, although I do think they'll fall off. I don't think they win 100 games this year. I still think the Astros are very good. Even though they did lose Garrett Cole, they still have good pitching. They still have Justin Verlander. They have Lance McCullers coming back, but he is coming off a big injury. They still have a pretty decent bullpen. They have Roberto Osuna. They have Ryan Presley. They have Joe Smith, who they re-signed. They did lose Will Harris. The Astros did lose some key pieces in the offseason, but the Astros are still very good. I still think they're a top 3 team in baseball, although I do think they'll have a worse season than they did last year. I've got to give respect to them. They still made the World Series last year. I have the Astros at number 3. At number 2, this is a team I wanted to put at 1, but I'm going to go with my Yankees. The only reason why I'm not putting the Yankees at 1, we all know the Dodgers at 1. The only reason why I'm not putting the Yankees at 1 is because the Dodgers got Mookie Betts. That's the only reason why I'm not putting the Yankees at 1. If the Dodgers never signed Mookie Betts, I would put the Yankees at 1. But that Dodgers team is absolutely ridiculous. Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy, Justin Turner. These two teams are so even. I just think they're both the same as good. I mean, the Dodgers didn't really get a star pitcher. They lost their best pitcher last year in Hyun-Jin Ryu, which is kind of a big blow to the rotation. But they re-signed Alex Wood. To fill in his spot. They still have Julio Urias. They have Clayton Kershaw, who's, in my opinion, not an overrated pitcher. He's kind of only an overrated playoff pitcher. Clayton Kershaw had a really, really good season last year in the regular season. He had an ERA under 3, I think. Walker Buehler is, once again, I think he's also a guy who could definitely win the National League Cy Young this year. The Dodgers, in my opinion, are the best team. It's so close between the Dodgers and Yankees. I think any one would make sense at number 1. But the only reason why I'm putting the Dodgers over the Yankees is because the Dodgers signed Mookie Betts. The Yankees have an amazing bullpen. The Yankees have the best bullpen in baseball, in my opinion. But the only reason why I'm putting the Dodgers over the Yankees is because of Mookie Betts. I have the Yankees at 2. They have the best bullpen in baseball, and it's not close. They have Adam Ottavino. They have Zach Britton, Aroldis Chapman. They did lose Dylan Betances. They still have Chad Green. They have Tommy Kahnle. Their bullpen is fantastic. They signed Garrett Cole, who arguably is the best pitcher in baseball. I'd still go Jacob deGrom, but I think Garrett Cole is, once again, he's an amazing pitcher. This pitching staff, although they did lose Luis Severino, I still think it's one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. I think the Yankees win the World Series this year, and if the Yankees do end up playing the Dodgers in the World Series, that would be awesome because it's a classic World Series. That would be amazing. The New York Yankees, in my opinion, will. I think they win the World Series this year. This is not. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Yankees fan. I think the Yankees will win the World Series in 2020. But I have them at number 2, and coming in at number 1, I have the LA Dodgers. I mean, well, actually, the Yankees, I'll kind of go into their lineup first. The Yankees have DJ LeMahieu and Aaron Judge. They have Aaron Hicks. They have so much depth. They have Mike Ford. They have Gio Urshela. Miguel Andujar is coming back from an injury. He looked really good in the spring. They have Mike Ford. They have Luke Voigt. The Yankees have a lot of depth. So if any player goes down with an injury, like somebody can replace him because the Yankees have so much good, really good bench bats. So the Yankees have so much depth, and that's why I think they're the second best team. But coming in at number 1, I have the LA Dodgers. It's just because they signed Mookie Betts. The Dodgers are an absolute amazing team. I think they're the best team in the National League. I think they're the best team in baseball. And the only reason why I have them over the Yankees is because of Mookie Betts. The Dodgers and Yankees, in my opinion, are just exactly even. I can't choose, one over the other. But I just decided to put the Dodgers at 1 because of Mookie Betts. And I didn't really want anyone, calling me like a biased fan. I don't want any bias on this channel. I love to be as, as unbiased as possible. So I have the Dodgers at 1. They have amazing pitching. They have an amazing lineup. And the Dodgers are going to be fun to watch next year. And if the Yankees and Dodgers play in the World Series, that would be absolutely awesome. So that's going to do it. Those are my power rankings for the 2020 season. And I might put the order down in the comments below of my power rankings, so you can you see what it is from the description. And put what you agree with, put what you disagree with. If your team's in there and I put you too low, sorry, it's just my expectations for your team going into the season. So if I put your team lower than you expect, I'm sorry about that. But that's my opinion on your team. So that's going to do it for this video. This took a very, very long time to make, so I'd appreciate it if you guys, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, put on notifications. I'll be uploading daily content. Most of the time, I'll be uploading daily content about the New York Yankees and the New York Giants. Make sure to stay tuned for, more MLB videos coming out pretty soon. I'm so excited for baseball to start next week. And, yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.